Hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We're going to bring you a couple of developing stories from the Commonwealth. Then we're super excited to be chatting with Dr. Jonathan Coleman, the founder and executive director of the Faulkner Morgan Archive, which is a nonprofit institute dedicated to cataloging and characterizing Kentucky's LGBTQ plus history. So look forward to a conversation with him. Then we're going to close out with a call to action in support of our new campaign for a nonpartisan voting fix for Kentucky. As you folks know, kind of like took a step back from the partisan politics, the campaigns, the politicians. We're starting to ease our way back into it. We thought that the campaign around that nonpartisan voting fix really was the best way to ease into it. But we do have a story today that we really want to focus on about politicians, another one about politics. So sorry, folks, I guess we're back at it. But before we get into that, we want to check in with you. Are you ready to help create a more compassionate Commonwealth? As the election results told us here in Kentucky, we are going to need long-term power building to create better policies, better political outcomes in Kentucky, which we desperately deserve. We hope you'll support Progress Kentucky in our campaign to make that happen. If you appreciate, if you barely tolerate this show, I want to let you know that our tech platform that we use to bring you the show has increased its monthly fee by about $20. So we could really use a new monthly donor or two to help us cover that cost. I'm going to keep making this pitch until we get those two monthly donors, $10, $20, $200. Why not? It all adds up. Make a contribution right now via our secure online website. Act Blue to turn Kentucky purple. All right, so do that. Why not? Now let's check in with our co-hosts. We got, as I was saying earlier, the most far-flung group of co-hosts. We are covering the Commonwealth tonight. So let us know who you are, where you are, and if you got a protest sign, let's hear it. And you there on the internet, we'd love to hear your protest sign. What are you protesting today? Feel free to put that in the chat while we are sharing ours. My protest sign today says, these clowns have got to be kidding. It really is. The news out of DC each and every day, it's like worse appointees with worse backstories, didn't do any vetting of any of the people he's put out there, and it really is seemingly catching up, but who knows? Maybe the public's like, yeah, that's what I wanted, is that drunkard, Lech. That's awesome. Anyway, so that's me. Let's see about our co-hosts. Dr. Clardy, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you tonight, Aaron?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. My protest sign says that the temper tantrum has ended. The sulking has ended. Now it's time to get back into the fight. And to piggyback off of what you said, when you elect a clown, you're going to get a circus. And one of the things that I fear the most in terms of some of these appointments that the president-elect has made is the appointment of Kash Patel to be the next FBI director, and the way that Christopher Wray is going to be pushed out. I've read nothing good about Kash Patel. He published an enemies list of people that he is going to target once he is in power. They warned us what they were about. For some strange reason, this country elected them anyway. And so this is going to be a very long 4 years. And so, you got to stop crying in our soup. The damage is done. It's time to get in the fight.
Yeah, no, I think we all deserved a little time off. We deserved kind of a mental break from it all. But, you can't really keep your head down too much because it's just beating you over the head with it. And here, Kash Patel, my word. All right, Kimberly, are you there? How are you doing? Where are you coming from?
Yes, I am here. How is everyone doing? It feels
doing
so
great,
good
Kim.
to
Yes, good to
see
hear
you
from you. Good to
all.
see you again.
Yes, and yes. Well, I want to say this. I just found out today that what it was is that it was a national day of rest for Black women. And I'm sure you all have seen the great paintings from this artist. I forgot his name, but it's the Black women sitting on the top of a building, drinking coffee or whatever, as they are watching everything be destroyed around them. I'm not going to go to that extreme, but I am going to take a rest for today. And then there's always tomorrow, because Black women are the cornerstone, especially of the Democratic Party. And I think I see the sentiments of everyone around me, plus on this great social media that we have, that most Black women are just exhausted. And then we found out that we didn't have as many allies as we thought we did in this election. So shout out to all the Black women. If you knew the National Day of Rest was Monday or not, if you do see this video or hear it, pick your day this month for your National Day of Rest. Honestly, I think everybody that is for the right thing needs a National Day of Rest. What do you all think?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. We're
Absolutely.
tired.
So my protest sign is #I'm resting.
You were doing a horrible job of resting because here you are on this show. But I appreciate you taking a minute away from the rest to check in with us here. We appreciate your views. Yeah, you deserve a rest. Like, honestly, everyone who tried their best to, for a different outcome deserves some rest. And like I was just saying, like, we took some time off trying to like step back from the kind of the actual partisan political fight. But yeah, on behalf of all white dudes who are, the biggest problem in this whole coalition of folks trying to keep our country on a trajectory that isn't just, burning trash dumps, right? We failed, right? And so I'm sorry, Kimberly, that, as you say, they didn't have the allies you would hope for and expected, and it's not fair for us as the progressive wing of the Democratic Party to rely so heavily on one constituency to save our bacon each and every month or each and every election.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I think that was very, very nice and sweet of you. So just make sure I cash app you after the show, okay, for saying that. I know that was coming from the heart. I know that.
Oh, it is. It's like tough. Like you see, like, oh my gosh, did Black voters turn out, and Latino voters didn't turn out strong enough with enough numbers. Like, but then it like goes without saying, like, all the white voters, there's so many of the white voters who just are like hardwired to vote for the Republican. Like, good God, what is wrong with you people? You don't have kids, you don't have a future, you aren't looking to the future. This party that is like wholly corrupt and owned by big business and doesn't care about climate change. It doesn't care about, women's healthcare access, doesn't care about public education. Right. So, all the things that we have seen on our ballot here in Kentucky, the reason we had to fight against them is because Republicans put them on the ballot because they wanted them to pass. Right. So, they tell us who we are and we vote against their policies, but we vote for the party, who's going to keep bringing them to us. So, like, what is wrong with us, Kentucky? Anyway, sorry. Soapbox number one.
The same thing that's wrong with everybody in this country is not just Kentucky.
Yeah. I mean, some blue states did the work, right? Blue states did the work, but not enough work, unfortunately. So there's not enough of them. All right. So let's do news of the week, right? We got a couple stories we want to do, and then we're gonna get to our guest. Very excited to have our guest and share him with you. So I do believe the first story is coming to us from Dr. Clardy.
It is. Wow, the hits just keep coming, and the clown show continues. There's a story out about Senator Rand Paul, of course, the man of the people, as he would like us to think. The story was posted in the Kentucky Lantern. It was written by Tom Loftus just yesterday. And the headline says, U.S. Senator Rand Paul still travels large courtesy of his political donors. The fundraising takes him to European capitals and, wait for it, Western ski resorts. And this is the tagline. This is a Dateline Frankfurt. Republican U.S. Senator Rand Paul's reelection committee spent nearly $50,000 this summer on luxurious hotels, restaurants, and travel services during a trip to Sweden and Denmark. Expenses included $13,627 paid to Stockholm's five-star Grand Hotel, $17,742 paid to a luxury travel service known as Mr. Charles of Stockholm, and over close to $7,500 at some of the finest restaurants in Stockholm and in Copenhagen, according to a report that Senator Paul filed recently with the FEC Commission, which, of course, is the Federal Election Commission. This flies completely against the rules and the regulations, and I'm just wondering, especially with this new administration coming up, will Senator Paul be held into account? What gives him permission to feel that he can abuse the public trust like this? And what could he be eating that costs $7,000 in either of these European capitals? It is just, I'm totally blown away by this. It is, but it doesn't surprise me because he's just displayed this type of hubris. Now it's just documented. Now we know for a fact he's doing it with impunity, and who's to stop him?
Yeah, it is crazy to look at that, and we'll put the article in the chat so folks can read it themselves. Tom Loftus, friend of the show, he's been on to, he does the deep dive into political fundraising and political spending, really important one. But yeah, this just a gross story of, Rand Paul using loopholes in the fundraising rules to have these really extravagant trips, like, 5-star, like luxury trips to Scandinavia and elsewhere under the auspices of doing fundraising. Definitely not the most effective way to do fundraising, right?
No, definitely not.
The entire goal of these trips is to let Rand Paul and some of his rich friends go on trips, right? Let him let him live like a billionaire, even though he's not, and he's ostensibly a public servant. Though who he's actually serving, fairly questionable.
We'll see how he votes.
I just want to say, as far as Senator Rand Paul is concerned, I really am not interested about all of that, because look at the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
Bingo.
And so many others. Like, we got way more bigger fish to fry right now. Like, he's gonna, what's done in the dark will come to the light. It's coming to the light. But I bet you money, $100 on the table right now, or I can go 2 episodes without saying something smart aleck to my little brother Aaron. Which one you all want, the $100, or I just don't? I feel like this. Most of them are doing it. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. Just some people get caught, right? Just like some people go to prison, and some people should have been to prison, but they just didn't get caught. Right now, his peers are not going to say anything. They're not going to do anything. They don't care, because they're doing the same thing. If we did an audit of the entire Congress in U.S., in the U.S., the Senate, the House, you're going to find that the majority of them are misappropriating their expense funds. And I bet you the same thing is going on in Frankfurt, because we've got state representatives that you never see anything happening in your district, and they do receive some type of a budget to do things in their district. So I'm just saying, Rand Paul is so off my radar right now, because that's a demon, but we got to prepare for the devil. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think any of them really should get a pass, especially when they are elected officials and I'd love to see more of Tom's work looking at Frankfurt and what they're doing there, because I don't disagree with you, Kimberly, that they are, likely, smaller, kind of smaller scale, but probably similar, situations. But yeah, the fact that Rand Paul, Mr. I'm fighting for you, and I want to make sure that we've got these independence from the system, is using the system to enrich himself, with this kind of money washing from his billionaire donors, right? Don't forget, one of the reasons that Amendment 2 was, supported so thoroughly and on the ballot in your face every time you turned around, lying to you about what Amendment 2 would do. Those backers were Rand Paul's buddy, who is a billionaire hedge fund guy or something like that out of Philadelphia, who dumped millions of dollars into that campaign, right? So Rand Paul is not a man of the people. Rand Paul is like hanging out with billionaires, acting like he's a billionaire as well, because why not? He's got the ends, he's got the the ability to wash those funds so he can just have these amazing trips, luxury travel, and ostensibly for his fundraising for his his PAC. Just gross, just super gross, and we should hold them all accountable for it.
Can I go you one step further?
Please.
In just a few weeks, we're going to swear in a criminally indicted president-elect who, the second he takes the oath of office, will be violating the Emoluments Clause again. So this culture of corruption is going from bad to worse. Senator Rand Paul is just a symptom of this. Kimberly is exactly right. It is pervasive. And what can we do about it? Vote. Call them out.
Vote better.
Because look, the people that voted for Rand Paul, let's make no mistake about it. They know who Rand Paul is. They know who he's running with. They know who his leader is. They know that there's a felon in the midst. They know that they have a senator that will lie to them in a New York split second. It doesn't matter to them. So, I'm just going to say that about his spending, which my tax dollars go into his wallet as well. Maybe my little half a cent, but still I worked for half that cent. Okay. And he's using it.
I will say this. I'm going to push back on you, Kimberly. I disagree. I don't think all of his supporters knew knew that this is the guy. I think he's got a really good brand of that kind of rugged individualist, anti-establishment, that kind of, the liberty wing of the Republican Party. That's not known for being we just hang out with billionaires and, want to be rich. That's not, I don't know.
Look at who they choose as the leader of their party. Look who they choose. And I know we're not party specific here on Kernels of Truth, but we've got to be truthful with ourselves first.
Yeah, and I get it. I think there's something about it. We have got a situation where, and maybe I'm like always a victim of my last podcast, right? But there's so much of this, the Democrats who, yes, are a million times better on the policies that I passionately care about, right? So it's how can I vote for a Republican? I kind of can't right now. But what's getting me to vote for Democrats when they're the defender of a system that everyone agrees is broken? And the folks who are the most vocal opponents of that system and say they want to burn it all down are Trump and his billionaire buddies and lackeys, right? So no one's excited about the system, right? Except for seemingly the Democrats have gotten themselves painted into a corner where they're the ones defending a system that's failing everyone, right? So the fact that you buy that a billionaire is going to be better for you with your very modest needs, housing and cost of living and all these things that are really motivating you to get involved with politics. The fact that you think a billionaire is going to defend that better, fix things better than, a more, down to earth individual, the Democrats don't seem very down to earth these days. And they talk like they're not down to earth, and they talk like they don't understand what you're going through. And Trump.
That came about with Obama, because of the simple fact that we had the coolest president known to mankind. Second would be Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton played the saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show, we fell out with those Blues Brothers Ray Bans on. We fell out oh my God, he's practically black. He could come to the cookout and stay. Then we get Obama, the coolest of the coolest. And he probably was drinking some Starbucks or whatnot or what have you. And he did have to play up his education more because he was a black man. So then they're starting to say, well, we don't care about little people stuff because, look at Obama sipping on Starbucks lattes and he's so cool. You remember, I used to love seeing him go down the steps from Air Force One. He was just so cool with it, his walk. his everything about him was just cool. And that's when people started saying that the Democratic Party was no longer for them. And they say it's because they think we're so educated and this and that, which we should be. Everybody should be if they have that opportunity. However, I will say this. The real reason they started that mess was because, like Van Jones said on CNN when Trump won the first time, allegedly, he said all of this is a white lash against a black president. Nobody was saying we was hoity-toity before Obama. Am I right, Dr. Clary? You're
exactly
the
right.
historian here.
I went to school with Van Jones, and he's always been intellectually and brutally honest, and he certainly was that night. And he certainly was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we know what it is. Everybody just needs to wake up. I know they hate to hear the word woke culture, but the what's the opposite of sleep? You're awake.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other tense of that? You're woke, right? Mm-hmm. So woke is just something like where you're becoming aware of what's really going on, and you're not looking at life through these rose-colored glasses. And that's all it was. It's not about us being so this and that, because the Republicans, every time they come up, they graduated from this, that. It is still a white lash against a black president, which has the trickle-down effect. They seem to can't do it economically, but they can do it on the psychological tip.
But you know what, Kimberly and Aaron, I have to throw this out here. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. This past weekend, Black Friday weekend, sales went through the ceiling. All types of records were broken. Yet at the same time, we were having a conversation about the price of eggs being too high, and that made the Harris campaign suspect because egg prices were too high, and so they're going to vote for Trump. But now we got plenty of money to throw around. You're not hearing about egg prices now because their man won.
Yeah. Low price of gas, the cost of living kind of like, not where we want it to be, not where anyone wants it to be, but, not on a trajectory of, increased pain, right? Things are getting better, which is awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I will say this. I think absolutely racism played a role. I think, what's the answer? Like, should the Democrats never, nominate a woman again or a black woman again? Like, no, like that's not the answer. The answer is we have to figure out ways to kind of overcome that. And I think, she was definitely cooler than Joe Biden. And way cooler than Trump. Give me a break. She was super cool. I would way rather hang out with her than hang out at a McDonald's with Donald Trump. Although I do believe,
but it trickles down to our state government and our local government. So, taking 60 seconds right here, let's talk about our state government.
We're losing your audio, Kimberly.
And it's time concerned. Can you hear me now?
I don't know. Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure what you said exactly, but
I said really quickly, it's trickling down to the state government. So when you look at the state government, it is dysfunctional. It's toxic. We send people there that we want them to make a difference. Some of them do, and then some of them don't. We have to be able to trust the people that we put into office, period. We have to be able to trust them.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue, actually, because we do need to get to our second story, but that is about state government. It's about the policies that were passed by the state government, specifically the Safer Kentucky Act, aka the Suffer Kentucky Act, making homelessness a crime. Advocates who fought that bill, which basically the Democrats were aligned opposing that bill, but despite the fact that that Andy Beshear vetoed it. The Republicans in Frankfurt have an ability to override every veto if they align. So they did. They overrode that veto. They passed the Suffer Kentucky Act, and now camping is a crime urban camping is a crime. And what we're seeing, and this is a story that comes to us from NPR, Kentucky Public Radio. Sylvia Goodman wrote this, and just showing that, yeah, there's nearly 24 unhoused people in Louisville are facing bench warrants because they failed to appear in court for unlawful camping, this new law, and that is because of the Safer Kentucky Act. So that just means, like, if you're trying to get out of homelessness, you've got one more thing you have to overcome, which is, the fact that you're being arrested, that you're being charged, and that fines are accruing. So if you're trying to get back on your feet, this does not help you out, right? This law does not make it safer. What it does is it gives cops one more thing they can harass homeless people with. It gives no more resources to homeless communities to help them, get out of homelessness, which, again, an arrest and a ticket doesn't necessarily help them do that. I don't know that people feel safer, but out of the more than 40 people who've been charged with street camping in Louisville, more than half had a bench warrant taken out against them on the charge. Some are also facing other charges, like in separate cases, like drug possession, shoplifting, terroristic threatening. I think a lot of mental health issues are coming to bear, obviously, as well, in these folks. But really, there's a feeling, that prosecutors and judges, they have no option but to order the bench warrant because of the inherent difficulties in getting someone without permanent housing to appear before a judge. But again, like, they're bringing it's a fairly bogus charge to begin with, criminal camping. And unfortunately, homelessness in Louisville is increasing, I think, because of some of those economic impacts that we were talking about earlier. Despite the price of eggs not being as high as it once was, it still can be very, very costly to get into rental housing, right? 10% increase in homelessness over 2023, 1,700 people who are experiencing homelessness just during 1 week in January. So again, really, really problematic. And that the answer from Frankfurt was not at all, to do anything to support increasing resources for homeless communities to get them to be, to stop, kind of break that cycle to get them into housing. But yeah, there's certainly some projects and programs that are out there I think need to be scaled up. And again, that kind of wrap around social services that can, like, meet people where they're at and figure out what they need, and some of it's mental health, some of it's making sure they're connected to their veterans benefits, some of it's being, healthcare of other sorts, obviously drug treatment is a big one, addiction treatment. And, we need to meet people where they're at. And this does not do that. It just gives us one more tool to kind of, like, make their lives harder. I don't know. You guys?
It's certainly a very cruel policy, as you mentioned. And I think that what we're seeing out of today's Republican Party, and we've been seeing this really over the last 20 years, that maybe the cruelty is the point. I don't know where all this is headed. I don't know where all this is going, but just the sheer vindictiveness of this law and the fact that the General Assembly was able to overturn his veto that quickly and with impunity shows us where their hearts really are. And it's really sad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Kimberly, you're a Louisvillian, so you can speak to this as much more firsthand than I can from Lexington. But I don't know, what's your vibe on this?
I have worked with the homeless / houseless for a number of years now. And some of the things that I do know is, number one, a lot of them are getting an SSI check. Did you all know that?
Social Security?
Yeah, that's the supplemental security income. Okay. A lot of them are getting SSI every month, and they're going to get between $750 to $900 and something a month. Okay. There are shelters right here in Louisville that would take them in, but some of these shelters and some of these programs, they want to also teach you about Jesus. So a lot of people refuse to do that. Then you have the ones that are severely mentally ill. They don't even want to go inside. They want to stay outside. But I can go out here right now and I could pick you 10 homeless people, and I guarantee you that 9 of them are receiving SSI benefits and also food stamps. Okay. So We have to learn how to help them utilize the resources that they already have. So this city was up in arms because the Hope Bus has like a homeless village, right? Where it's got shower and all these type of resources, case management, on and so forth. However, they want to start charging $300 a month to stay there. Well, most of them are getting SSI. So you would say, well, that's affordable. It's still going to leave them maybe 450 to, $650, a month. But a lot of them are feeling like it's wrong. A lot of the citizens here in Louisville are feeling like it's wrong. I don't know if it's wrong or right. I just know that we need to find a way to help them and how they use the resources that they're already getting.
Yeah, like I was saying before, the kind of those wraparound services to kind of meet people where they're at, help them with the challenges they personally have, whether it's accessing resources or using the resources effectively. I don't know, but I do think likely arresting them for campaign isn't going to help them address.
No, that's not going to help. And I read an article yesterday that in this state of Kentucky, we are already running amok. And what I mean by that is our prisons are we have too many inmates in these prisons, which in essence helps the private prison business, right?
Yeah.
So if we keep throwing these people that, could be completely severely mentally ill, okay, or they got some hang-ups or whatnot, where you think they're going to be a pipeline to? A pipeline into the private prison system.
Right.
Yeah. Or, the kind of county jail, right? Which is also, it's, funding, a fundraising effort for a lot of county governments as well. It's like they want to be at maximum capacity so they can, bill the state or whoever it is, right? So yeah, definitely some problems that Safer Kentucky Act does not address, for sure. All right, so we do need to move on. Appreciate your views on all this and a couple important stories. As I always say, these links to the stories, so you can read them with your own eyes. They're in our chat. They're in our show notes, and some important journalism that's happening here in Kentucky, thanks to NPR and thanks to the Kentucky Lantern. So I'm going to move on to our interview. Thrilled, I tell you, to have with us Dr. Jonathan Coleman. He's the founder and president of the Faulkner Morgan Archive, which is an extensive collection of over 15,000 items and 250 hours of oral histories covering 200 years of LGBTQ life in Kentucky. The archive serves as a powerful tool for activists, for scholars, for artists, and museums seeking to explore and elevate Kentucky's LGBTQ plus history. Dr. Coleman was raised in Eastern Kentucky. He was a James Still Fellow at UK, where he received his doctorate in history 2014. We have a couple of doctors of history here today. He often lectures on queer history and was a consultant for the Kentucky LGBT Heritage Initiative, which was funded by the National Park Service. In Coleman's book, Anywhere Together, A Queer History of Kentucky, is forthcoming from the University Press of Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Coleman. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Aaron. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, it's early. So let's, can you tell us a little bit more about the Faulkner Morgan Archive, what your mission and programs really seek to accomplish?
Sure. Our mission is pretty simple at the Faulkner Morgan Archive. It's our goal to share Kentucky's LGBTQ history. We want to be a safe harbor, a place where these stories can be ensured to live on for generations to come, and to help folks make sure that their stories are saved and shared. So we've now been doing it. In fact, last month we celebrated our 10th anniversary. Started out in some pretty small ways, but have grown tremendously over the past decade. And that's mostly because Kentucky has an amazing story to tell. The history of Kentucky's LGBTQ community is a bright thread in the fabric that makes up the tapestry of our beloved Kentucky.
Awesome. And you are coming to us from the actual archive. That's what's behind you right now.
I am in the physical archive itself. So all of those gray boxes that you see behind us on this archival storage, those are all filled with various collections that help tell a broad, diverse, and exciting history.
Awesome. That's so cool. All right. So I think Kimberly, you have a question for our guest?
No, not really, because he got his doctorate at UK, so I can't talk to UK.
Now, U of L has an amazing LGBTQ collection too. That, in fact, we just worked with the Williams Nichols collection at U of L. Louisville is celebrating its 25th anniversary of having a fairness ordinance, the first in the state.
Yes, yes.
And so we even extend the love to Louisville, even though we're in Lexington.
Well,
I saw love down here.
I saw on your website it's not just Lexington's history, right? So you are looking
right.
to
we represent the whole state. So we have collections that range. In fact, we recently were able to help a queer artist based in Louisville get a grant, and this will be, I think, pretty cool. Where she will actually be going to all 120 counties and interviewing LGBTQ people from those counties, and those oral histories, the photographs that she takes from those, will actually come and live in the archive. So when that is completed, we will certainly be sure to have every county represented in the Faulkner Morgan. But yeah, our collections span the entirety of the bluegrass state. In fact, our collections are especially rich in material coming from queer Eastern Kentuckians. And a lot of the researchers who come to use the Faulkner Morgan Archive take use of those Appalachian collections.
That's so cool.
Like
Kimberly, I cut you off.
Thank you.
And do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I really do have a question, though. Dr. Coleman, can you tell us a little about your institution's namesakes? And then also, if folks don't really know about Henry Faulkner or Robert Morgan, could you share what made them such special figures in Kentucky's queer history? I really would like to know that.
Sure. So we are named after two queer Kentucky artists, Henry Faulkner and Robert Morgan. And it was really their collection that started the archive. I always like to joke, the archive started as an accident. It started with the collection of Bob. It was 2013. It was a great year for Kentucky's LGBTQ history. There was a large exhibit at Transylvania University, and the documentary, The Last Gospel of the Pagan Babies, which traces a certain segment of Kentucky's queer history, had just been released. And the question was sort of, what now? What do we do? And a lot of that collection was in the hands of Robert Morgan. So Bob is from Lexington. His mother was from Eastern Kentucky. He has been out in Kentucky, an activist since the mid-1960s, artist, AIDS activist, and he was taken in at a fairly young age from a gentleman a generation older, the Kentucky painter Henry Faulkner. And Henry Faulkner still retains a whole lot of renown for his artwork, but also for the free and open life that he lived. Henry was born in the 1920s, becomes extraordinarily well collected, well admired for his artwork. He's collected by folks like Tennessee Williams and Vincent Price and Betty Davis, people like that. In fact, his artwork still sell for quite a number. And so Bob had inherited a lot of Henry's personal effects, his papers. And so you had this collection from Bob's own life. You had the collection that he held that was Henry's. And where do these things go? Bob had been approached by several, in fact, they were state-funded institutions, about his collection and Henry's collection going to these. And these are great institutions. Of course, I'm a historian in Kentucky. I use these all the time. a lot of the folks who work there are not only colleagues but friends. But Bob was worried about what could happen. You know, what did it mean for a queer collection to go into a state-funded institution? Now, of course, as the employees there rightfully said, you know, the state legislature doesn't have a whole lot of influence on that. But that was 2013, 2014. That feels like a long time ago. And so Bob asked if I would help take care of the collection. And so we really just started it as a way to catalog Bob's things. You know, he said, I'll never forget this. If we kick the can down the road in like 30 years or so, maybe then this stuff will be safe. And in 2014, that seemed a little, I don't know, precarious. I thought Bob was perhaps making too big of a deal about it, but sitting in 2024, I think he made the right choice. You know, things have really changed in the past decade. So this idea that it is the queer community of Kentucky that is collecting these stories, collecting these artifacts, is what's so important, right? The community, of course, prizes its history and is going to make sure it stays safe. And so the Faulkner Morgan really is in honor of those two original collections that started the archive now a decade ago. I'm very proud that we now represent hundreds of different collections, like I said earlier, from all over the state. But it was those two who, as Henry always liked to say, saved the seeds children. And it was those two who really started that for us.
So cool. That's so awesome. All right. So I know that the other historian here has a question for you.
Yes, I do. Dr. Coleman, is always great to meet a fellow colleague and comrade in the struggle.
Exactly. In history, it's always a struggle.
It sure is. Well, my question to you is that with your view and insights into Kentucky's LGBTQ history, what lessons do you have for the community and its allies today? And by that, we live in a clearly divided moment in our Commonwealth, with Lexington sitting in the top 15 for the most inclusive cities in electing in the U.S. electing Emma Curtis as the city's first transgendered urban county council member, while the legislature has passed sweeping anti-LGBTQ laws over the veto of our governor. How do you see our position in that context and with those facts?
Right. And history is a struggle. In many ways, Kentucky has always been an extraordinarily complex state, right? A state of almost dichotomous, right? In some ways, in ways that don't make very much sense. And I think the fact that you have in many ways, extraordinarily LGBTQ friendly urban centers of Kentucky, in contrast to what is often perceived as the rural centers of Kentucky or the rural areas of Kentucky. I think you probably see that playing out politically in lots of other states. But I think that sense of a divide is probably inaccurate. Because in many ways, it does sort of, I don't know, it kind of polishes, right, an urban queer experiences while it kind of denigrates a rural queer experience. And the deeper that you start looking into these stories, right, of Kentucky's LGBTQ history, the more you see that just like even how sexual identities, right, can be really blurred and sometimes defy categorization. Oftentimes, so do people's other forms of identity, like the rural, like the urban, like that dichotomy pretty quickly breaks down. So, for example, the reason why I think Lexington is especially queer friendly is because it's made up of so many rural folks, transplants, right? A lot of the folks, especially the folks who have become leaders of the LGBTQ movement within Lexington, within Louisville, are not natives of those cities. They're coming from more remote, more rural places. So it's actually rural folks who are doing a lot of the activism, who are actually moving a lot of the needles that we see happening in our urban centers. And that's true not only within Kentucky, but without. I just recently published an article with the Kentucky Register of the Kentucky Historical Society on a Kentuckian named Lige Clark, who was from Clay County. He was from, very rural background. He went to Alice Lloyd College for a little bit, ended up in the Army, and then he's in DC in the early 1960s. Really handsome guy, extraordinarily vibrant, great smile, and queer. And he quickly integrates himself with a lot of the leaders of the Washington Mattachine Society. So like the earliest pickets of the White House, the earliest pickets of the Pentagon, Lige is there. And of course, as a member of the armed services when he's doing it, he and his partner eventually go to New York, and they'll start the first weekly gay newspaper. In fact, Lige Clark is the first person to ever report on what we now call the Stonewall riots in New York City in 1969. And he literally plays cover boy for the gay movement. Like, he's everywhere. In fact, Geraldo interviews Lige Clark in one of his very first sort of exposés about queer life in the United States. So here's someone who's living in what seems like a very urban, right, Greenwich Village, New York City gay ghetto story, but he's a leader in the LGBTQ movement there. Literally is the first person to ever publish an interview with Bette Midler. I mean, that's pretty gay, but he's originally from Eastern Kentucky, and he talks about it all the time. He really couches his identity in his ruralness, his Appalachianness, which is that's not how we think about sort of gay rights activism in the 1970s as being couched in an Appalachian identity. But yet there he was. So I think that complexity, once we start to dig down in our history, I think that is a powerful lesson for us to learn today, that I think there are probably unlikely allies in lots of places. And I think the great things that you see happening in places like Lexington and Louisville, and really in cities and towns and hollers across the state, is thanks to a sense of Kentuckiness, I believe, that you see sort of shining through just about everywhere. So I love that history can do that, right? Of course, circumstances change, the context is always different, but there are lessons that we can pull out, right, that help us think through what we're currently doing. One thing, in fact, speaking about Louisville and New York, someone I've just recently been writing on a little bit is a man named Dick Leish. And Dick Leish was he organized the first planned demonstration of LGBTQ folks in the nation, the sip-in at Julius's Bar. So Julius's Bar was a gay bar in Greenwich Village. It had been raided by the police because it was illegal to serve open homosexuals in New York City. So in 1966, Dick Leish calls the New York Times, gets three of his buddies, and goes to Julius's Bar, walks in, and says, "We're homosexuals. We plan to remain orderly, but we would like to be served." And the bartender, famously, there's a great New York Times photograph, famously puts his hands over the glasses and they click. They refuse to serve those four men. And that was basically a trial to see if the city would actually support its ordinance or not, and they don't. And so that effectively decriminalizes homosexuals openly gathering in bars for service. Now, if you go, Julius's bar still in Greenwich Village today, still a gay bar. The whole back room is about the sip-in. I mean, that famous photograph is enlarged in the back. They love that story, right? They love that they get to claim that they are the side of the first planned protest for LGBTQ rights in the nation. But what they don't tell you is that Dick Leish had just moved to New York. Dick Leish was a Louisville boy. And think about it. What is a sip-in? A sip-in is a sit-in, right? And Dick Leish learned that from his parents who were involved in the civil rights movement of Louisville, right? Of course, it's going to take a Southerner to understand what it means to plan a civil rights action like this, right? So here is, right, in many ways, the birth of the modern LGBTQ movement, right? This sort of legal push happening in New York City, but it's actually coming from the history of Black Kentuckians, right? The history of Louisville, even though it's never couched that way. So that's an amazing, it's an amazing tool to help renegotiate people's understanding of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, both for Kentuckians themselves, queer and straight, and especially for those folks who are outside of our borders.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
I personally would just want to thank you for all that you're doing and the hard work that you're doing as a scholar and as an activist to make our Commonwealth and our country more inclusive. My hat's off to you, sir.
I appreciate
Can we say that Mr. Robert Morgan is in the chat right now? Big shout out to him.
Oh,
yes.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So Nate says that he's honored to have him watching and posting. I think Nate wrote that on behalf of all of us. We are honored to have you watching and posting also, Mr. Morgan. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, yeah. That is great. I
think your point, and I don't know if you saw it in the chat, the point that like you were making about so many kind of rural, gay folks kind of coming to Lexington, because maybe it's just maybe a little more comfortable to live. You don't want to necessarily have to fight the battle each and every day, right? But that they are such important leaders, and we've had a couple of them on this show for sure. Silas House has been on a couple of times. Willie Carver, was a regular co-host, and we continue to have him back whenever his schedule allows, right? So, really important, I think, to just underscore that, right? That it's not leadership just from Lexington or just from Louisville. It is from throughout probably all 120 counties, which I do want to check in with your artist, see what they think about the number of counties that Kentucky has and whether we should maybe get rid of a few of them, bring them all together, because that is just a lot.
I say by the time she is finished with this project, she will very much be on that bandwagon.
But I want to appreciate all the work that you're doing, and like Nate said, recognize your founder, Morgan, but I just also how can people experience it or support it? Obviously, it does not look like a very public friendly space that you're in there. I don't think we can kind of waltz in and take a look, but how can people support it and check it out?
Sure. There are lots of ways to support the Faulkner Morgan Archive and the work that we do. And to learn more about us, first of all, I definitely would recommend checking out our website, faulknermorgan.org. In fact, we were just able to expand it thanks to some generous funding from the Mellon Foundation. So learn more about it. In fact, you can now browse short descriptions of our major collections. It's not a fully digitized archive in any sense of the word yet. That's a very big job. We're not there yet. So take advantage of that. Of course, we are completely grassroots and community supported. And we have, thanks to our supporters, we have been able to grow. We now have a full-time archivist, or a full-time employee now. So the archive is growing pretty tremendously, really proud of that. And the archive is actually open. It's a we do take it by appointment. We like to know that you're coming. So if you're an interested party, if you're a scholar, if you're an institution, we loan out our collections all the time for exhibits, that sort of thing. And then we also have a really rich and robust set of programming ourselves. So some of them are actually completely free and digital, including our Pride of Place tour. That's our first walking tour. We'd love to do more across the state. It is based in Lexington, so you can, they're at the Lexington Visitor Center. They're on our website. You can do it digitally, or you can write us and we will send you a physical copy for free. We have also participated a lot in public monuments related to LGBTQ history. So we were actually responsible for the state's first historic marker to LGBTQ history. Really proud of that. We also have a 3-story mural of Sweet Evening Breeze, a huge icon in Lexington's history in Kentucky's LGBTQ history, with a little QR code interactive panel there so that folks can learn more about her and her amazing story. We do talks, we do exhibits, we do lectures. And next year we're unveiling as far as we know, the first comprehensive exhibit of Kentucky's LGBTQ history, thanks to some significant grant funding. And that will be traveling. So if there are institutions who are interested, libraries, other organizations, pride centers, churches, whatever, let us know. So we'll be looking to book that exhibit throughout the Commonwealth, starting in probably June of next year.
Oh, so cool. And then, as you know, I'm here in Lexington. I saw something that's happening, I think, around town right now. Is there a place I could go, maybe grab coffee and learn a little bit?
Right. So one of our traveling exhibits, it actually just left the Lexington Public Library, which was great because that's where I did my early voting. So to walk in and see an exhibit called Here, Black, Femme, and Queer, the experiences of Kentucky's femme-identified Black Kentuckians. And so great exhibit. So it just left the Lexington Public Library, but has just been installed at Lucy Brown Coffee. So if you are in Lexington, stop by Lucy Brown's to see that exhibit. It's fascinating. So it chronicles about 12 different folks spanning, well over a century of Kentucky's Black and LGBTQ history.
Oh, that's awesome. I hope they have an eggnog latte, because
I think they probably do.
Starbucks doesn't have it this season, and I'm outraged. So this is awesome. I want to just say thanks again for joining us and sharing a few stories, and enticing us to check out the rest of their archives wherever they're available. But yeah, really fantastic. Glad you could join us, Dr. Coleman.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, so let's see. We do need to move on. We have got our call to action. As we mentioned earlier in the show, we are up to, I think, about 50 letters sent so far around our effort to expand excused early voting to include caregivers to the ill and the infirm voters who are currently allowed to use the 6 days of excused early voting in Kentucky. As many of our friends listening likely know, there are 3 days of no excuse early voting, right? The Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before the Tuesday election. Anyone can go vote early there. But what a lot of folks experienced with the no excuse early voting was very long lines, right? Which really works against the ill or the infirm and their caregivers. So utilizing the 6 days before the no excuse days will allow for shorter lines, for increased flexibility, exactly what those folks need to utilize their right to select our representatives and to weigh in on ballot measures. So, this is I think a really smart effort to just add a little bit more, the folks who need that excused early voting, the caregivers of the folks who are the ill and the infirm, right? Really important. This comes to us from our friend Betty Pendergrass. We interviewed her last week, where she just shared, her personal story of working in the county clerk's office and experiencing firsthand folks who thought they would be able to vote early but weren't able to, and had to make other plans, which were really challenging for them to make, given the folks they're trying to help, right? So the folks who are helping their loved ones really should have that flexibility. So some great news on this front. Please do take action. Please do send your email to your state senator, to your state representative. One of the folks on our email list, or one of our supporters, saw it. Our great friend Adam Moore, the new representative of the 45th district, he wants to take this up. He wants to help out on it, which is awesome. But we do need more folks to ask their representatives to take action as well, because, as we all know painfully well here at Progress Kentucky's Kernels of Truth, the Democrats have a super minority. So a Democrat saying, I want to do something, does not mean it gets done. It means, well, we better have about 5 Republicans who say they want to do it to counteract the Democrat, right? So we do need, this is a nonpartisan fix. I firmly believe it in my bones that this is a nonpartisan effort. So let's get some of these Republicans to take action as well. So please head to that website. It will be in our show notes. Give me a second. I can find it and put in our comments as well. But yeah, so that's our call to action today. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for your support. And please do send those emails right away. Kimberly?
Yes, Aaron, tonight has been phenomenal. Our guest, Dr. Coleman, was A+. I could sit here for another 30 minutes to an hour listening to him speak about all of the wonderful things that he is doing for the LGBTQIA+ community. And plus we had Mr. Morgan on here. How amazing is that as well? One of the founders. So thank you tonight, Aaron and Dr. Clardy, and thank you, Nate, as well for production. But let me do the disclaimer really quickly. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization. I know that scared everyone, but don't pay attention to what you just saw. Registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, otherwise known as CAVE. And we are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is always to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Make sure to join us next week to hear from Jimmy Early, the program director with Glean Kentucky, which is a local organization tackling the twin concerns of food waste and food insecurity in the bluegrass. Got a lot of that going on right here in Jefferson County. Production of episode 189, wow, was produced by our very own Nate Orshan, who also wrote and performed our theme songs. You can find more information and music from Nate at natosongs.com, and that's NATO songs.com. And also, hey, I'm going to put you up on some game right here. Keep your ears tuned in real closely, because from what I'm understanding and my sources are telling me, that Nate has got a new song dropping very, very, very soon. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcast and our show notes are available also on Apple, Google, Spotify, and just about wherever you get your podcast. If you do listen to the podcast, please, 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 I'm begging, please give us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. Logo and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. Thank you to them as well. So great show tonight. You've made it through half of the week. You only got Thursday and Friday for most of you all. There's some of you all in retail, so we understand you're working really, really hard. But make sure to share this. This is information that needs to come out. And then we will see you next week, same time, same bat channel. Have a good rest of your week.